May the peace and blessings of God be upon you all into this seminar that is being convened by Ibn Khaldon Center from Qatar University, Jazeera Brookings Doha Center, and Jazeera Center for Studies. So this is a seminar that is going to talk about an intricate dossier, which is the dossier of Yemen. We're going to discuss the different issues that have branched out from this issue. What is happening in Yemen? What are the objectives that have been made from different parties to the conflict? What are the objectives that have been made and achieved, and what are the ones that have not been achieved? What are the real weights of the different parties to the conflict? And what is the future of Yemen in the light of such a situation? So the questions that are being posed vis-a-vis this Yemeni scene, there is a humanitarian crisis that is taking place, and there is also a very low level when it comes to services and also the livelihood of people. And after the coup that was in Sana'a, now we have another coup in Aden, and also we have so many issues and so many questions that are going to be posed today. This seminar that is going to be broadcast live through Jazeera Mubashir. Before that, we would like to broadcast a report to you about Yemen. What is happening in Yemen? So we have June 2014. The Houthis have started an attack from Sada to Sana'a, and they controlled the different strongholds of the traditional forces. On the 21st of September 2014, the Houthis controlled the capital, Sana'a. The 14th of October, the Houthis imposed their control on Al-Hudaydah port. On the 20th of January 2015, the Houthis controlled the presidential palace in Sana'a, and the President Abdul Mansour Hadi fled to Aden. The 26th of March 2015, the Saudi Arabia formed a coalition force and started its air attacks on the different areas of the Houthis. July 2015, the government of Hadi controls Aden and uses it as its own temporary capital. Mid-August 2015, the Yemeni forces regained control on 5 southern governorates. October 2015, the governmental forces control the Strait of Bab al-Mandeb, one of the most important navigation pathways in the world. August 2017, the Houthis have killed their own ally, the former President Ali Abdullah Saleh. December 2017, the Houthis announced that they have their own drones and also they have their own reconnaissance planes, and they have started their own attacks. April 2018, the Houthis for the first time, they used their own drones targeting both Abha Airport and the city of Jizan. January 2019, the Houthis target Al-Anad base in Lahj through a drone, killing high-level commanders. The 2nd of August 2019, the Houthis said that they have carried out 50 strikes, air raids through their own drones on Saudi locations. The 17th of August 2019, a new Houthi attack through drones on Al-Shiba oil field. The 7th of August 2019, the separatists with the support of the Emiratis have controlled most neighborhoods of Aden. 28th of August 2019, the governmental forces, they carried out a counterattack and also they regained some of the regions and areas of Aden. 29th of August 2019, the Emiratis, through their forces, they carried out 18 raids in Aden and Abiyan. And the 30th of August 2019, we have seen a retreat of the hegemony and the control of the legitimate forces in Aden, Dala, and Lahaj. September 2019, the legitimate government controls Shabwa and reinforces its existence in Abiyan. I would like to come to you once again, and I would like to welcome my guests here in the studio, here in this hall at Qatar University. We have with us here Mr. Yasser Al-Yemeni, the leader of the General People's Congress, and also I would like to welcome Mr. Bakil Az-Zandani, head of Department of International Affairs, Qatar University, and Mr. Saeed Thabit, bureau chief in Yemen. And through satellite, we have Mr. Muhammad Al-Bukhiti, the member of political wing of Ansarullah from Yemen. We would like to welcome you, and we hope that this seminar is going to be full of discussion, full of interaction. But we would like to start with the very important question: what is happening in Yemen? This is a question that has perplexed so many researchers. We hear about coups and coups, changes of objectives, but let's listen to this description from the politicians themselves. And we would like to start with Yasser Al-Yemeni. Yasser Al-Yemeni, who is from the General People's Congress. What is happening in Yemen? May the peace and blessings of God be upon you all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to extend my thanks to my brothers here in the state of Qatar, its emir, its people, and its government. Would like to thank them for the position that was expressed by our brothers in Qatar, that they stick to the unity of Yemen as it was expressed by the Foreign Ministry of Yemen. What is happening in Yemen? We have been following throughout the last 5 years of this war what is happening in Yemen, as we have seen in the reports that was screened about the Houthi coup that took place in Sana'a. We have seen the intervention or interference of the Emirati-Saudi coalition in order to retrieve and regain coalition represented by Hadi and the national government. But what has happened in the last 5 years, we have not seen credibility from the part of our brothers in Saudi and the Emirates, those who have been speaking for 5 years about the objectives of the Storm of Resolve to retrieve legitimacy and the president of the state. They have announced and declared certain objectives, but implicitly they have had other objectives, as we do follow in the southern part of Yemen. They have carried out a coup on the president and on the legitimate institutions of the state. They claim they have come in order to retrieve, regain legitimacy. They have stopped the aircraft of the president in the airport of Aden and did not allow him to land in the airport of Aden. They talked a great deal for 5 years. They have said that they have come for us, for our children, for our state. But what is happening is really strange. So this is something that we do not understand. What does Saudi Arabia want from Yemen? What does the Emirates want from Yemen? For 4 years, they have been using militias. They have not allowed the president to come back to the state. They have not allowed the government to come back to the liberated governorates. And now, in the name of the militias that are outside the scope of the institutions, the presidency and the state, this is what is happening in Aden. The Emirates is controlling Socotra. It is controlling the different ports, the different airports, the different sources of oil and gas. And now they're talking about a camp in Balhaf, and the governor, through this kind of camp, they said that this is a governmental installation and there shouldn't be any military units, whether these are Yemenis or Emiratis. This is what is happening in Yemen. When our brothers speak and say they have come for Yemen, they are exchanging roles. They are sharing our resources, and they want to separate the south from the north in Yemen. We have followed in the summer of 1994, and also we have seen when Zayed and Fahad, they supported the separation, and the Emirates have come to us. This is what we thought, but they have come to divide our country, to make the state a failure and to transform it into militias. This is a description to summarize what is happening. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yasser.
Muhammad Bukheti, member of the political wing of Ansar Allah, you have controlled Sana'a for 4 years, and you have pushed the country, as it was described, into a conflict that is in which almost the Houthis are the triggering factor. So the question is, what's happening in Yemen, in your point of view? In the name of God, the most merciful, most compassionate. Of course, the problem of our rivals or enemies in Yemen, they always go into the details and don't go from the total picture, and they count on the results and do not want to discuss the root causes of the problem. So we first all took into the map of the world and have a look at it, and we will find that the world is living a sort of stability except our region. Why? The reason is that because the conflict in the Islamic countries is still in the interest, military interest, political interest, and economic interest of the West. We must keep this in mind. The aggression on Yemen, in fact, came to confiscate the Yemeni decision-making and its independence, and their attachment to their legitimacy is only to confiscate the decision of Yemenis. Because Hadi gave all his authorities to the outside, to bin Salman, who in his turn is giving it to USA, so sort of jizya. So in fact he's subjugating Yemen in a way that Yemen cannot move in the interest of the Arab and Islamic world and the interest of its national interior interests. No doubt, this aggression has failed in achieving its goals. So when they say we should hand over our weapons and the areas we control so that Hadi comes back to rule the country, this is only if they want to come back and to rule the country. 2011, 2014. The revolution of 2014 was a coup against the American ambassador and a coup against the exterior powers, and we recovered the independence of Qatar, and our revolution of 2014 became a political project that was translated into a partnership which gave nothing to the heroes of Ansar Allah, and anyone who wants to make sure of this should go back to the agreement of peace and the national partnership. This was a very, very important deal that put an end to the conflict. Then there were exchanging of accusations between two sides, who is undermining the agreement so that the world is launched again. So who is responsible? Who is responsible for not implementing this agreement, this deal? Our enemies all confess that this because they don't commit themselves to this agreement of peace and national partnership, saying that was imposed on them by force. This is ridiculous. This is the simple and naive justification of what they did. So that's why what we say in a very clear way, that in Yemen there is now a war going on, and there are different areas of control, or different controls and different power points. The solution is to recover the Yemeni decision. The moderators interrupting him, saying that we'll come back to you later, Mr. Bukheti. Said they're trying to interrupt him, that we'll come back to you when you come to the point about what are the solutions. So we stop at this point about what's happening, and then we'll come back to you, and we come back to the panelists. Dr. Bakhit Zindani, who is the head of the International Affairs and the University of Qatar. We heard what Yasser Yemeni said about what's happening in Yemen, saying that how he described the conflict and what said that these are only the Emirates and Saudis having their own interest and imposing their own interest. And you also heard that there are some international schemes by USA and other forces in Yemen. And we'll come back to this point later on. But let's now understand what's the concept of international, and from point of international relations, what's happening in Yemen. In the name of God, the most merciful, most compassionate, I would like to thank Al Jazeera Channel and all the organizers of this meeting or this seminar. In fact, what was said by Mr. Yasser and Mr. Muhammad from Sana'a do as right or true to a large extent, but nevertheless there's an important point that we must raise, which is the idea of that the Yemenis, they had a coup against their own selves. In fact, everybody agreed. All the political forces agreed to go into a national dialogue, a comprehensive one, that does not exclude any element or any component of the in Yemen, whether the women, the Houthis, the southern issue, the youth, and those who really had made a lot of sacrifices because they began the revolution. And then also the issue of pardoning the Congress party, those who had some problems or with the previous regime or the issues that took place in Saada and the south. So this was really a very good exit strategy for the Yemenis that stay to depend on these outcomes and to be committed to the constitution. But once the one began looking into to the exterior, the problems began to be seen appear in Yemen. In fact, everybody knows that all the forces that they are there today are all linked or have relations with the outside forces who, on their turn, do not want the interest of Yemen. They look only to achieve their own interest. And international relations, we say that the main motive for all the countries of the world are their own interests, only interests, whether these are economic interests or military or security interest or ideological ones. Excuse me, Doctor. The rest of the time we have for this point, what interests are you talking about? We know that Yemen is an important geographical position and population also wise, and there are some very good fortunes that are possible to be under the ground, and the climate is very much varied, and these are all a point of interest. And Yemen has historically been a point of interest for other forces and major powers, but all these failed in Yemen, and even the ones that are now trying to have their interest in Qatar will not last and cannot achieve what they want. And I would like to say to the Houthis who are directly linked to Iran and our brothers in the Transitional Council related to the United Arab Emirates and those in the legitimate government that are linked to Saudi Arabia. But what I tell them that they should think of what Yemen itself. So when the Houthis frankly announced that they are behind the killing of Abu Yamama in Anan at this time, and the using of the missiles and the tanks against the legitimate forces of Hadi. And this is something paradoxical and very strange. Everybody knows that the countries of the region are trying to expand at the expense of the smaller and weaker countries, and consequently this sort of conflict takes place between these regional countries. But the other motive, the driving force, is the exterior one. So we say the regional countries are only tools in the hands of the international forces. Thank you very much, Dr. Bakhit. And before going to Mr. Saeed Thabit, the Bureau Chief of Al Jazeera Bureau Chief in Yemen, we are happy to take the questions of the viewers on both page sites of Al Jazeera Bashar. Mr. Saeed Thabit.
Our Bureau Chief, can you describe what is happening in Yemen today? In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. In Yemen, it seems that there is a new formation of the geopolitical map as it is seen from the position of the different regional and international powers. And this is not far away from what is happening in the Arab world, in Syria, in Iraq, and other countries. We are one Arab nation, as we know, and we are in the process of a new division. The map of the region is being redelineated. As we have seen, we have a new political map that had been formatted in the 20th century. It was delineated then, and it started from Yemen in 1918 when the Mutawakkili state was brought into Sana'a, and after that the demarcation of borders have been made at the time. So what is happening now? Nobody can run away from the real description of the situation. So Yemenis have entered into a revolution. They have taken to the streets, and we have had a congress, a conference in which all factions, and this is the first time in history, we did not have in the past such an incident. They have come up with one historic document where we have had all factions meet and write down this document and agree on this large project, which is the outcomes of the national dialogue, including the Houthis. Straight away, we have seen the entry of the different regional and international forces through internal tools, and we have seen this new problematics that have started. So nothing was a surprise. We knew what happened. There was a revolution against Basundua, and we have had the revolution that had led to the toppling of the regime, and we have had the peace and partnership agreement. I do remember that. As you remembered, Hamdi, we were covering the incidents that were happening under the shelling that was taking place, and we were following what is happening in the exchange of fire that was taking place. Such a scenario had led to what is happening now. A number of regional powers were cooperating with this coup, and Aden was the red line that should not be touched. And when Ali Abdullah Saleh tried to lure his partners, we have had the Saudi and the Emirati forces, joined forces together, and we have had the storm of resolve. After I left Aden, I said that the storm of resolve is a sin to rectify a historic sin that was carried out by the persons, the entities that have carried out this new kind of thing. So they wanted to redelineate the different borders in keeping with a certain formula. When we look in what is happening, we find out that the Saudi Emirati coalition is a tool used by the international forces in order to reformulate, redelineate the map of Yemen. The Houthis are partners. The legitimate government is also a partner or part of it. And also we have had partners, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and Iran. What is happening after the regaining of Aden? We have seen the tanks on borders and where they stopped on lines such as Karish, Dayhan, in certain areas that are very, very important indeed when it comes to the map that is going to be delineated. We have entered into the 5th year of this catastrophe that Yemenis are undergoing. We think that this crisis is similar to a kind of a ball of threads which is getting getting entangled and made. So whether the solution is going to be political or military, the situation is getting so intricate, and instead of having a conflict between local, regional, and international kind of powers, we see that the conflict is between different minute and granular entities, which makes the conflict branch out of the big entities into smaller granular entities. So what is happening is a very big incident, and I do expect for sure that we're not going to go back how we used to be. And I would like to underline, and I'm going to conclude here, so what is happening now in Yemen, in the southern areas, those who in the southern areas are not going to accept to be ruled by Houthis who are using a sectarian banner, and the other also parts are not going to accept to have somebody come from somewhere without any tribal influence to come and rule them. I'm describing the situation on the ground. Everybody has talked about a description of what is happening in Yemen, but we would like to move now in this seminar into another component, which is the objective. The objective of the coalition forces, as you have said, Mr. Yasser, is to make Yemen regain its legitimacy. What has happened is that the Houthis have become strong, and they can use drones now targeting airports and Saudi installations, whereas the legitimate authority that is being defended is still in Riyadh. You're talking about the Emirates that has its own expansionist ambitions, but we see also the statements made by media. So this objective of the legitimate government, who is going to regain this legitimacy? If we say that the coalition forces that is supposed to regain this legitimacy has derailed from the pathway that would lead to that legitimacy. When we defend legitimacy, when we defend the president, we do that from the standpoint of the unity of Yemen, from what is happening in Yemen. This is what makes us defend the constitutional legitimacy represented by the president. But unfortunately, the coalition has not betrayed us. The coalition forces have announced their objectives through the storm of resolve, but unfortunately, they are the ones who try to undermine and defeat the legitimate authority. So the legitimate authority is similar to Saad al-Hariri, who was detained in Riyadh. So we have seen what is happening, the targeting of the president, the houses of the president, and also the guards, and so on and so forth. All these things are happening, and the president cannot do anything vis-a-vis what is happening. He is in a kind of a solitary confinement. So the Yemenis should not allow neither Saudi Arabia nor the Emirates to expand in our country. Voices should be raised, politicians, media representatives. Yemen is not going to die, and we are not going to surrender nor to Mohammed bin Salman nor to Mohammed bin Zayed. This is our country, and we're going to put heart and soul into defending our country. This is a plan that has been made that Saudi and the Emirates is dealing with, and they are exchanging roles in such kind of a scenario. In this particular point, because we would like the discussion to be much more vital, legitimacy, this is the objective. This is the objective of the Emirates of Saudi. What is the objective of the legitimacy? The legitimacy had its own clear position. It wanted to control all the liberated areas in Aden, in Shabwa, and so on and so forth. And we have seen what has happened in Shabwa. And the legitimate power, they have defeated bin Zayed and also the camps of the Emirates and the militias of the Emirates. And after that, the legitimate authority wanted to move to Aden. Those who said, who have come for the president, for the legitimate authority, are the ones who have put up this legitimacy. We have had more than 300 people dead and wounded, and the Emirati aircrafts had bombarded them on Aden, and before they left the night of their departure, they have had the instructions about the area of Al-Alam, which is 20 kilometers away from Aden, and the coalition forces have been asked to stay until the morning, and they said they're going to make the militias hand over their installations without any killing or fighting. But what we have found, that the coalition forces or the aircrafts have come to kill our people in Aden. This is what had been followed by people through the different media outlets. We were hoping that things would have been clearer, but the position of our brothers is what had led Yemen to what it is now. These are very, very important, continuous accusations to Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. And we'd like to move now to Mohammed Al-Bukhiti once again. Have you achieved your objectives? You have controlled Sana'a, you moved to Taz, you tried to control Aden, and also you have been expelled from Aden and other governorates. Maybe you're only existing in limited areas. You have your own drones that you use against Saudi Arabia. Has your objective been achieved? Our objective is not to control Yemen at the expense of the Yemeni components, because peace and partnership accord that was signed has not given Ansar Allah any privileges, and as it was expressed by Mr. Saeed Thabit, he said that the others have used power. So this is maybe trying to limit the capabilities of the other parties that have signed such an accord. So this means that we have imposed an accord, an agreement that would give everybody their rights, whether we believe it or not. This is our accord. Brother, our objective is to regain the independence and sovereignty of Yemen. And the war that was declared on Yemen is to make Yemen surrender to the power of the United States of America. MBS and MBZ are only tools in the hands of the United States of America. This is only to serve the project of the United States of America, and this is what is happening. We cannot accept that. It is necessary to regain the independence and the legitimacy of sovereignty of Yemen. The presenter is interjecting. If you hear me, you are talking about the objective of the U.S. and the objective of Saudi and the Emirates. I'm asking you about your own objective. Have you achieved your own objective? Can you deny that you coordinate with Iran, and now this is to do with the national security of Saudi Arabia? Many analysts look at you as being used by Iran, and you're threatening the national security of the GCC countries. How do you respond to that? As I told you, our objective is to protect the independence and the sovereignty of Yemen that we have regained in 2014. Until date, we have achieved our objective, which is the independence and sovereignty of the state, and also to make the decision not in the hands of the outside world. Our brothers are not talking from a general standpoint, but they're talking about the details. Mr. Bakit said that Ansar Allah are linked to Iran, and this was your question too. We are not linked to Iran. We are linked to the cause of a ummah, the Palestinian cause, and Iran, if it has come because it is linked to this main cause. Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, all of them are closely linked to this main cause. We as nations, as peoples, as countries, as states, we have to defend this cause, and this is our honor. It is an honor to Hamas, an honor to Jihad al-Islami, to Hezbollah, and so on and so forth. But Saudi Arabia is fighting Hamas, and it is fighting Islamic Jihad. Mr. Saeed Thabit said this is a sectarian project. This is not true. This is not right. Because what is the common denominator between us and Hamas? We and Hamas and Jihad. I would like to ask you, the presenter was interjecting, sorry. We would like the followers, we would like the audience to understand what is happening. You're talking about the objectives of others, but you're not talking about your own objectives. Yeah, our objective is the independence of Yemen. We cannot have a country of justice, a country of law, without having independence. We would like to do that. Those have come to topple this liberation project. Now, the US, Saudi, and the Emirates have come in order to bring the forces that have carried out the toppling on Brahim al-Hamdi. They have brought them again into Yemen. The outcomes of national dialogue had underlined national partnership between components of the state and also consensus between the different parties until the elections are being convened. Nothing has happened in order to achieve this consensus and partnership. What has happened is that they changed the Minister of Interior and they got a person in charge in order to carry out these attacks on the basis of Ansar Allah. So, but we have confronted and tried to respond to the attacks that have been used against us. So this is an honorable objective. Ansar Allah said, have made mistakes, others have made mistakes. We all have made mistakes, but through the confrontations, who are with the causes of the state? Ansar Allah, those who are with the just solution is Ansar Allah. Unfortunately, the defeated party, the party that had run away, still insists that it wants to have a kind of a singular decision-making process. They say, give us the weapons, we want to have the areas of control. These are defeating demands. We do invite all components to come back to the table of dialogue in order to come up with a decision to put an end to the war, to the siege, and to release the detainees and the prisoners, and to start with a dialogue in order to form a transitional, other alternative kind of transitional kind of government. We are very realistic, very just, and would like this new authority to be the one to impose its authority, and the authority of law and the authority of the constitution and all governorates of Yemen, and to represent Yemen in international fora and to respect the rights of all citizens without discrimination. These are general principles. If the others are put in doubt, why do they insist to have decisions taken on their own?
Let's now give the floor to Dr. Bakir. Dr. Bakir, there are different goals. The Houthis, the legitimate forces, the Emiratis coalition with Saudi Arabia. It is not no longer an Arab coalition. There's only Saudi Arabia and the Emirates in it, and some few Sudanese soldiers. Now the goals have changed. The goal is no longer to regain legitimacy, and as Bukheti said, that the goal is some interest of the external powers. So I want to know from a political point of view, the objectives of the different conflicting powers with the new forces that are the Transitional Council, which is supported by the Emirates. Have these objectives, has they been achieved? In fact, everybody pretends that they work for the interest of the homeland, and the homeland, in fact, is the victim of them all. The Houthis say that it's for the sovereignty and independence of the country, and the transitional councils that we fight for to regain the legitimacy and the state in the south. And the legitimacy of President Hadi say that we fight for the same objective. But in fact, the coalition, since its starting point, had very suspect goals and objectives for a simple reason. Because there are some facts that say that it's they who had agreed with the Houthis in the beginning and pushed them to come into get into Sana'a, and in fact a lot of money was given to them. And also they were hurt by the previous president's negotiations, and even after entering Sana'a, and the leaderships of the Congress and the Nasris and the socialists had negotiated in Mozambique with the Houthis to reach an agreement. Even President Hadi was arrested in his own house. So there was a dialogue between them. But there was a language stronger than the dialogue, which is that of the statu quo. Those who have the force, who are powerful, impose their own conditions. The agenda of the United Arab Emirates, unfortunately, in Yemen, was based on that they are or they are proxies of major powers to put an end to the Arab revolutions, which are dominated by Islamic forces. So they took this duty or this mission. So then the Houthis would go into them directly to attack al-Islah in Sana'a, and then they bring back the forces they wanted. That was very difficult to achieve, and people began to think in a different way now, and cannot fall into such a conspiracy easily. The other thing, the coalition was asked to provide the national forces with money and weapons to defend their own territories without any intervention from on their side, because any intervention would be against the feelings of the Yemenis or any Arab or any people who find that there are some external or foreign forces come into their country that would provoke them. And in fact, this was a point that gave the Houthis, to some extent, an opportunity to say that there is an aggression, and that what they are doing today, all what they are doing today, is because there is an aggression against Yemen. The national legitimate army had not received any weapons. I am aware of that, and I have acquainted with this, and I have followed up this issue for a long time. And even the medium-sized weapons were not delivered. A number of people received some money, but the army on the front did not find even what to eat. I remember that in Taz, some of our colleagues here are from Taz, there was a tank that goes back to the 70s that protected the whole Taz area on behalf of the legitimacy, and people knew that the tank was coming because of the smoke coming out of it. So they received no weapons. They gave money to the national, they didn't give money to the national army, and they began doing so for a long time. So since the beginning, their intervention was suspect and not clear, and there was behind all this a very deep plan or scheme, and which we can see now. Now we can see, as Saeed said, there are divisions, and they are made, they're sharing the cake between them. Saeed Thabit, the question is to you now from another angle. How will the Saudi Arabia deal with the transitional Southern Council and also with the legitimate government, and will the Saudi's position against regarding the Houthis to change? What is clear is that the present coalition of the Saudis and the Emirates wants to mention it, to turn Yemen into mention this in 2014 and give it back to the militial forces, and then went to the south to militarize the country in a way that Yemen would be formulated as the external forces want. Saudi Arabia is part of the problem and not from the solution. Since 26th of September revolution, there's the real revolution for the people. As for the Saudi Arabia, what's happening now in the southern governorates, Saudi Arabia has succeeded in dividing the zones into different powers to different powers in a way that they brought back the country to 1976 or even before that, when there was no one political entity. There were about 23 sultanates, and then there came the Arab nationalist movement to face the colonial forces. Who they created a state that's called the Yemeni Sovereignist Republic that unified the country. The colonial and reactionary forces at that time resisted this and continued to work on dividing and tearing apart the south of the country. There was some divisions, but not. But after '76, there were no real divisions. There were two Yemens only, but there were several Yemens. Now, what they want is to create different several Yemens, and we find that the latest agreement of the 10th of August began with a missile that the Houthis launched and killed Abu Yamama. So there was a sort of a silent language that changed this process to put an end to the legitimacy that was in the south of the country and to create a new entity. Now, at present time, it's clear that the south has been divided according to the will of the Emirates and Saudi Arabia into two sides. One under the control of the Emirates, Lahaj, Aden, and Jabian, part of Aden, Shabwa, Hadramaut, and Mahra, under the control of the Saudis. And this has become, so far, until this moment, this is what's going on. We don't know what changes will take place in the future, but in the August events, the changes were made in this way. As for the northern province, is what's called by the Houthis within their own arrangements. There is a middle area. The Houthis do not control all. Yes, I'm coming to this. In history, the Arab South, that the Transitional Council's construct, this terminology of recovering the southern Arab side. In fact, this was an entity that's only from the western entities. As for the south, Mahra and parts of Shabwa were not under this unity of the Arab, South Arab. So that's why one of the dangerous part of this motto, it calls for dividing the South unknowingly. And the idea of the democratic Yemen and the southern Yemen, something could accept and could deal with according to the variable factors on the ground. It would not affect the national feelings of the Yemenis, whether in the north or the south. But now, in the middle of the country, but the middle of Yemen has always been a changing factor, a sort of important factor that decides things after all. Even since the invasion of the Imams in 1918, this middle of the country, central part of the country, was a very important one. Now, at Ma'rab and parts of Shabwa, these central parts are usually the deciding factor of the future of Yemen. We will speak about the different scenarios later on, but is this because the framework of dividing or cutting up the country to pieces, or what? I would like here to say that we do receive the questions from our viewers on Al Jazeera Mubashir on the pages of sites of Twitter and Facebook. Now we take the questions from the audience, which is, by the way, a very big public audience. And it seems this Yemen is interesting and important for many people and different kinds of people. Please introduce yourselves before asking the question and give the time. Mr. Ahmed Al-Muayyid, political analyst who is close to the Houthis. Do you want to ask a question or make an intervention? You can have an intervention or a question. You have 3 minutes. 3 minutes are too little. I salute you all. In the beginning, I would like to express my reservation about most of the terminology that you used. You have used the expression of coup d'etat and as you wanted, and the revolution as you wanted, legitimacy as you wanted, which is contrary to what the Yemeni constitution says and the parliament bylaws. This is part of fooling the Arabs by imposing some terminology on them that are not correct, but speaking of them as if they are true. So you can take your time, the moderator says. In the beginning, I would like to say that that patriotism cannot be divided into pieces. One cannot say the Emirates are aggressors at the time that I used to upload it, and now I say the only Saudis are aggressors, and say that the Saudis are the contrary. No. Nationality or patriotism cannot be divided into pieces. This is double standards. There is a political party that depends on the forces of the exterior and pretends to believe in partnership, which is not true. Because any group that depends on the forces of Saudi Arabia, have you ever heard that Saudi Arabia had called for a truce, whether in Ramadan or in the Eid, and they ever decided to stop bombarding the people for one day, while as the Houthis have proposed eight truces. In Yemen, now there is a committee for reconciliations, but the Saudis neglected because they don't want any solution. There is a public grace pardon in Yemen, and saying that everybody is partner with us, but nobody pays any heed to that because it's not in their interests. That's why once again I say that those who find their strength through depending on the external forces, they think they believe in the same mentality of Mohammed bin Salman because they want to remove the others. You know, I call your names Isa Muslim because you believe in the principle of eliminating the others. Ansar Allah, you don't call them by their name. You only call them a name that was that they refused. You call them Houthis, while as they have several times said they don't like to be called the Houthis. And in the they are called Ansar Allah. And the agreement of peace and partnership, they are called Ansar Allah and elsewhere. So you have your name, Ahmed Hamdi, I call you by your name. So when I call you by another name, this means that I don't believe in your existence to start with. So how can I have partnership with you? If you convince me and embarrass me one day that you say that those who depend on the external forces have one day proposed a truce after bombarding the country for 5 years, why don't you embarrass Ansar Allah and prove to the world that they are criminals, as you say? No. They never made such an initiative because they knew that would lead to a solution which they want. I'm sure that Muhammad bin Salman did not go into this war but to control his backyard, and we should not expect that somebody who is considered not legitimate to our Ansar Allah, they would allow them, after all these losses of the world, to be part of a legitimate government. So we should never accept that Muhammad will accept a government with Ansar Allah in it. He will only want to eliminate the others and eliminate all his enemies. And that's why the war will continue a very long time.
We would like another guest to be given the opportunity to ask a question. Yes, sir. Microphone, please introduce yourself. Yasser Jabir. Do you have a question to one of the panelists in particular? I have a direct question. I do see that Yemen is being lost between sectarian loyalty and patriotic loyalty. So the question that I would like to ask, when are we going to practice the art of concession in order to preserve Yemen, the art of concession? And this question is to all components of the Yemeni community. In the name of God, the most compassionate, Dr. Zakaria Matar, an economic advisor, there is a unified kind of operation room about what is happening in the region, and we have another of operators. We have Netanyahu that goes to the United States of America. The executors are the Zionists and so on and so forth. What is happening in Syria is happening in Yemen. What is required is to destroy Yemen, for them not to ask for anything from the Saudis. The same thing in Syria. We have the Israeli factor. The regime is destroying Syria for Syria in the future not to threaten Israel. Your question, please. My question, testament to what I saying, those who want to have legitimacy in Yemen are the ones who are toppling the legitimacy or against the legitimacy in Egypt. And these are the ones who want to retrieve and regain legitimacy in Yemen. Thank you so much. So the second row, please. May the peace of God be upon you all. Engineer Salih Al-Jarmuzi, we are with the revolution. Our brother remembers me, he is smiling. In 2014, the legitimacy has seen an end to it. The revolution of youth had been destroyed. There was an agreement that was signed with Saudi Arabia, what is called the GCC initiative. I do remember all these phases that have started in Qatar and ended in Saudi. I'm really surprised with the audience. I am known, many injustices have been made against me. I do cry when I hear about those who talk about those who represent legitimacy. Why do you decline the calls of the Houthis? What is your interest in this war? Are you happy to be in hotels and to have salaries paid to you? Up to when are you going to continue doing that? You're talking about legitimacy. There is no legitimacy in Yemen. This is not a legitimacy. This is a lie. This is running around the bush. You are people who understand. Please forgive me if I say that. You see what is happening. Thabit, you have said that Saudi Arabia and the Emirates the presenter is interjecting, asking him to use adequate words. Please take the floor. Please take the floor, but please use words that are adequate to the discussion. What do you want to say? What do you want me to say about legitimacy? Do you want me to tell lies? Do you want me to try to forge the reality? I swear to God, yes, sir. You do really represent Yemeni citizens at times. Sometimes you do that, sir, but some other times the panelist is interjecting, Hamdi is interjecting, so we can't hear them, I'm afraid. Both parties are speaking at the same time. He is saying, I am Yemeni, please hear me. I am defending my own country. I am defending the Republic. I am defending the Union, the unity. From Riyadh, the guest. No, defend your own country in your own country. No, I live in Switzerland. So you ran away from your country to Riyadh to Switzerland. Yes, sir. Let's they are all speaking at the same time. His name is Tha'ir, which means revolting, and he said, I am revolting. I sold my house in Sana'a, he says. We are not in a kind of a bilateral polemic. No, we want to have a discussion, a dialogue. I am the one moderating the discussion. Please hear me out. I will give you the opportunity, but I just want to clarify. So we do not want to have this one-to-one polemic. You said that legitimacy is a failure. Do you have any observations, any particular questions, if you do have? Go ahead. Is there a president that does not talk to his own people, say what is happening? Please respect us. Respect the Arab citizens. Every time you go to Iran, you made us all Iranians. So we have 100 aircrafts from day one targeting and shelling. Are these Iranian? Thank you so much. Yes, your idea is very clear. I was hoping that you would give me enough time to express myself. Yes, your idea is clear. We'd like to move to another person in the audience to ask his or her question. Thank you so much to the speakers. Please introduce yourself. Dr. Mahmoud Al-Sabri from Taz. I work in Qatar University. All the speakers, I work for Qatar University. All those who speak say that the problem lies outside Emirates, Saudi, and Iran. And since we all know that this is the problem, then the solution should be a Yemeni solution. Muhammad al-Bukhayti from Sana'a said that we are defending the sovereignty and the independence of the state. So Taz has been under siege for 5 years. Had it been an aggressor? No. I have members of my family. I have in excess of 100 young men who have died due to the fact that Houthis have carried out an aggression on that village. So we have is the Emirates in Taz? Is Saudi in Taz? This is just a question. The problematic is that I think that the Houthis do not accept to have a dialogue. So my question, aren't the Houthis talking about partnership? Why haven't they resorted to elections? The transitional dynamism they're talking about. This was indicated in the constitution, but we're toppling this constitution, the laws and the legitimacy. And after that, we claim things. When are we going back to the elections, to the constitutions, and so on and so forth? Thank you so much. Anybody in that particular area would like to hear your questions from the ladies, please. Any questions, please? Microphone to one of the ladies. One of the ladies at the far end, please. If you can introduce yourself, your name and your affiliation. Naima Al-Yahri. I could not hear you. Naima Al-Yahri. First of all, since that person said that the president is in Saudi, similar to Al-Hariri, why wouldn't we try to find a new president since he is not influential? I'm sorry, I'm calling you brother because I do not know your names. When we talk about the Republic of the Southern Arab part of Yemen, and we do ignore the state that was established in the 60s. So do not say that these states are in conflict because the Mutawakkili state was a state of conflicts. There was no stability, not even in the north. So there wasn't a time when we have had one state. You discussed amongst you the different ideas, but as it was expressed by the gentleman, you have put a framework to the different concepts as you wanted them to be, but you ignored the division that is taking place. So this is not a matter that it is the Houthis who have talked about truce or armistice. You have looted houses, you have raped. So what is the importance of a truce after you rape our women, after you loot our houses? So even the Yemen itself does not know what is happening, talking about the legitimacy, talking about putting a framework for the different concepts. So the ideas that are in contradiction with each other in the discussion that took place. Thank you so much. Mr. Hisham, do you have a question that you would like to pose? Thank you so much. We missed the name of the person. What is happening in Yemen? Everybody knows what is happening in Yemen. Yemenis and everybody is looking for solutions, and the solution should be Yemeni. I read an article by Muhammad al-Houthi who said that they are extending their hands for a Yemeni solution. How can this be the case since the matter is sectarian? The other person talked about a sectarian and used a sectarian kind of narrative or discourse. So what is the mechanism whereby such dialogue would take place? Dr. Shami, go ahead. May the peace of God be upon you. Abdurrahman al-Shami from Qatar University. Very briefly, would like to go back in history. This is a war that has been based on false and wrong calculations. Yemen lived in agony since 2011, between 2011 and 2014. And the Houthis thought of it as a golden opportunity, and Ali Abdullah Saleh thought of it also as a golden opportunity to deal with al-Islah, the reformists, at the expense with the Houthis, in cooperation with the Houthis. The Arab coalition in 24 hours said it is going to make the situation go back as it used to be, and they're going to put an end to the coup. This war was based on false and wrong calculations. If we do not recognize that these calculations were wrong, this war is going to be a war that would not see an end. All what we're going to see, more bloodshed, more killing, and so on and so forth. After 5 years, the Yemenis have discovered this. These things were very clear. The Emirates had bombarded. Maybe some of you have not paid attention to a very important statement, a statement whereby it said that the Emirates is going to defend its interests wherever it is. It is going to fight terrorism. This is a new kind of phase of the war that is going to come. And the legitimacy has put all its cards in the basket of Saudi Arabia. So what is the solution? Is to break the silence, to break the ice. So Yemen is not going to be in the hands of Houthis alone. The world does not want Yemen to be in the hands of the Houthis only. And no one party in Yemen, irrespective of its power, can rule Yemen, nor the transition that claims that it represents the South. We are all Yemenis, and we know what is happening. We know what is happening since the Union, and we know that there is a dynamism and the transition and what is happening. So, and if they win, they cannot do that, which means we're going to have a new war between different factions. And after 95,000 soldiers, as the representatives of the dynamism talking about the security belt and the Shabwani elite, but it seems that they have disappeared in 2 days. So what is the solution? The solution is to break the ice between the adversaries, between the enemies, and all the political forces together can, and very briefly, come up with a solution. The most important idea, we have a national dialogue document. How long have we spent on that? Millions of dollars and 2 years. This document cannot be achieved once again, because you know, and all Yemenis know, because it took a lot. It took us more than 2 years for us to be able to have such a document. But there was a coup that was carried out. So the national dialogue document is the solution, and going back to the political track and to put an end to this excluding kind of discourse. We would like to repeat once again. I would like to give the microphone to the lady at the end, please. My name is Shaba Al-Banna from Georgetown University. I'm a student. I have a question. Why Do we forget the role of Hadi and his Minister of Defense when it comes to the division of Yemen? Why wouldn't we have a component that would call for the end of the Emirati and Saudi occupation? And if there is a national reconciliation, who is going to adopt such reconciliation, such effort? Who is going to adopt it? Thank you so much. Very briefly, please. Introduce yourself, please. Hassin al-Shami from Yemen. I would like to pose a question to Mr. Thabit and Mr. Yasser about what is happening in Yemen. Can you imagine that after 5 years have elapsed in Yemen, and after what has happened in Yemen, bombardment by Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, the killing of children, of the elderly, the destruction of hospitals, halls of condolences, and the kids that have been killed in Saba, everything has been documented by the UN. Can we accept a legitimacy that is represented by Saudi? We do not know what the intentions of Saudi and the Emirates. And when it comes to the support of the Emiratis, of the militias, throughout the last 5 years, they have been supporting militias. This is a description. What is your question? My question, how didn't the legitimate government know what the Emirates wanted from them? They have kept silence up until we have seen the objectives of the Emirates and what they want in Yemen and so on and so forth. Why haven't they talked before? Would like to give the opportunity to others. Why didn't the legitimacy understand the role of the Emirates? First of all, my name is Badr Shaib Al-Karwi. So the legitimacy have stopped their support of Liwa al-Shaibi, sorry, and they have facilitated his killing or assassination, and also the talk of Sana'a, and Hadi ran away. This is to al-Bakhiti. He said the coup was on the American ambassador and not the president. So he was followed into Aden and then into Oman, and after that from Oman to Saudi, where he announced and declared the storm of resolve. The second point, or the third point, is the weapons. These weapons are not belonging to Ansar Allah. These are the weapons of the national military forces. So under which umbrella they want dialogue, knowing that they are the ones that are destroying houses.
Now we want to hear points of view of people who are not Yemenis from outside Yemen, so that we know their perspective. So let's have the point of view from Africa, from the corner of Africa, which is the strategic depth of Yemen. Introduce yourself, please. I have a question. Just introduce yourself. Mansour Suleiman from Eritrea. I have a direct question to the panelists. If we take into consideration the situation at present in Yemen, and we know what is the position of the coalition regarding Yemen, the Yemenis at present time, what can they do? Can we witness a sort of agreement and reconciliation? What can the Ansar Allah present? What can they present or suggest to get out of the Saudi guardianship, and what concessions? If I want to negotiate with Ansar Allah, what can be given? How can one sit to the table of negotiation direct? Muhammad Sharqawi, researcher on Jazeera Center for Studies. So I don't need to present myself. My question is about an equation that is not present between these different parties in the conflict. Before 2014, Yemen used to resist being called a fragile country. After 2014, it has become one of the failed countries. So the question is, why do we compete on platforms like this and fight each other on the ground, while as we should think about often about Yemeni personalities who would not accept to go and to use arms and weapons and accept to try to have a reconciliation between the Yemenis, such as the Hudaydah Agreement and the others. That's to say, there are some qualified people to begin to initiate an initiative, a national initiative, to go into reconciliation and not to reproduce these extreme positions. Please make your questions short. Yes, lady there. Nisma from the Doha Center for Postgraduate Studies. The draft constitution is a very good base for a national dialogue, but before signing it and sending it to the parliament in Yemen, there was an acceleration in the events and things stopped there. Through the different discussions, one referred to the national dialogue and so we as Yemenis, we attach ourselves to dialogue. My question is, the outcomes, didn't they represent the different Yemeni parties, and were there some people who were there who did not represent the people? Or was it an idealistic, too idealistic, as if it's an Ethiopia? Or do we need a new dialogue? Please, briefly. Your name? Ahmed Al-Nobi, student in international affairs. The question, the strategic position of south of Yemen for international trade, does it play a role in the present events? Another question? Assalamu alaikum. Nasser Yafi, graduate from University of Qatar. Why one does not make a referendum for the people of Yemen about the issue of unity? There are some demands, there are demonstrations that began since 2006. So why do you organize a sort of referendum about the unity of the country? Last two questions. Abd Halim Qutb, journalist in Al-Sharq newspaper. Question to Mr. Yasser. After the August coup d'etat led by the Transitional Council, there were some ideas presented about legitimacy, which was trying to disengage from the coalition and to create a sort of entity inside Yemen, and then the beginning of liberating the Yemeni territories, whether from the council or from the Houthis. So does the legitimate government does it have the tools necessary for independence without depending on the coalition led by Saudi Arabia and the Emirates? My other question is to Mr. Mohammed al-Khaiti. Briefly, why the Houthi missiles do not hit the Emirates and they only are targeting Saudi Arabia? Is it only because there are common objectives to the Emirates and the Houthis to put an end to Al-Islah party? So the question is why the missiles are directed to Saudi Arabia and not to the Emirates? Please be brief. There are so many people who want to ask. Ahmed, a university student. My question to Mr. Bakhaiti. You said that you are fighting the Saudis and the Emirates because they are linked to the USA. But in fact, you are related and linked to Iran, and you said this is because of our Islamic causes, and you say that you are Ansar Allah. So what is what is the fault of the children who you are forcing to repeat what you say and your ideas? God, Allah, does not you need, so you don't need, and that's why are you not allowing the children in the mosques to memorize the Quran? There are so many questions. Maybe we'll back to you after discussing or answering some of the questions. Now we read some of the questions that we received through the Facebook and Twitter of Al Jazeera Mubashir channel. Hussein Musbahi, question to Yemeni: why does the Congress party with all its components does not condemn what the Emirates are doing? A question, Hussein Musbahi, do you know who the real enemy of Dr. Qasim, the tweet? Why doesn't the coalition always say the same thing that as a pretext to destroy Yemen, forgetting that they have handed over the whole country to the Yemenis, to the Houthis, sorry. Hamad Shimeri says, why have you handed over the country to the Houthis or the others in the south of the country? The Yemeni issue is full of so many questions, interrogations, because it's a very complex one. These are the questions that we received, and we are trying to come back to the audience, hoping that you find some time to come back to you. Yes, there's so many questions to you from the audience, Facebook and Twitter. But the biggest question was not raised in the audience. Where is the legitimate government in this crisis? Why hasn't it taken an historic position? So far, President Hadi had not expressed any position, neither through the United Nations, nor he only made some appeals. But let's say the legitimate government does not make any real position except appealing for the Trump president. So what is the position of the legitimate government? I think that President Hadi has become sort of prisoner in Saudi Arabia, and they do not allow him to leave light of all these conflicts and wars that were against even the legitimacy and the president himself. We all know that about a week ago, President made a clear statement. The Yemeni envoy in the Security Council also made a clear statement with which he condemned the Emirati position and their crimes. The Emirates are practicing this terrorism against dissidents for years. If President Hadi was an agent or a mercenary, we would have disagreed with him. But we all agree on the interest of Yemen and the symbolism of Qatar and the symbolism of keeping our elected president. We all agree that all political parties should go to the negotiation table to save Yemen. But Saudi Arabia and the Emirates have their own projects in Yemen. And everybody is aware of that. And so if these militias had been created for 4 years against the president, against the legitimate government, which they pretend that in their storm of resolve, they pretend that it is to protect the legitimacy, and they also refused to rent Socotra Island and to rent the airports that the Emirates called for, and that's why they created militias. So, as my colleague Mr. Said said, they have divided the southern governments between Aden, Adian, and Vala. So the question is, what has the legitimacy done? You are describing this conflict, okay, but what have they done? The question is, the legitimacy have done nothing. Why not go into a dialogue with the Houthis? We all appeal to the president. We all appeal to the government. Not now, but for 4 years, we appeal them to have the president government to have a clear historic position. If we go to dialogue, as Saudi Arabia is calling, with the militias of the Emirates and their mercenaries, this should have been done before destroying Yemen, before killing the children of Yemen and the women and old people, and before destroying our infrastructure and schools, and the president should have began the dialogue with Abdul Malik al-Houthi. But now, why, after all this time with you as a coalition, you come to kill the people, whereas in the name of legitimacy, while you are completely against this legitimacy? This is not only what I think, this is what all the Yemenis think. I am not defending neither the president nor anyone. I only defend Yemen and its unity, our country, which is being the focus of so many people in their conspiracies against Yemen. We are attached to the symbolism of the president as a symbol for the republic. And if the president is not there, the militias will be ruling the country for 50 years. Now we'll give the floor to Mr. Mohammed Bukhaiti in Sana'a. Many questions that have been raised by the audience or Jazeera Mubashir, Twitter and Facebook. But there's a bigger question. What kind of concession you can make in order to reach or to achieve a political solution? This is the core of many questions. And maybe you can also reply to our questions if you have them. Yes, thank you very much. Of course, this dialogue that we just heard is something good, although there's some difference in it, but it's good to have this brainwashing and brainstorming. I clearly say that we, as Yemenis, we don't need to make any concessions among ourselves. All what we need is to stop killing each other and to respect each other and to recognize each other. And to make things clear for the viewers and the people here, we must raise an important question. What is the legitimacy that brings together all the Yemenis, that could bring all the Yemenis together? Is it the legitimacy of the salvage country in Sana'a, which can decide defending the sovereignty of Yemen? Is it the legitimacy of the hotels in Riyadh, whose decision is in the hands of Mohammed Salman, whose decision is in the hands of Trump, or is it the decisions that were taken by the Emirates? We will overlook all this. We will overlook saying that we are the people defending the sovereignty of the country, and we consider ourselves that like the others, other forces, and that there must be a legitimacy that should bring us together. What kind of legitimacy can bring us together? Some people suggested the idea of elections. One cannot organize elections overnight between different zones. So what legitimacy could bring us together? It is the legitimacy of fair national partnership, the legitimacy of agreement and reconciliation. And also, we must also agree on the issue of the sovereignty and independence of Yemen, because one cannot build a state without having sovereignty and independence. No country can make a concession of its sovereignty and independence. And to who should that be there? To Mohammed Salman, Mohammed Zayed, and who are well known by all. So how can we resolve this? How can we reach this result? We need a dialogue with the Yemenis. So I call upon my brothers here to discuss these issues. But the problem is that they go into the details and cry about the results. For example, Mr. Yasser and others, they say the Saudis had stabbed us in the back. But who had brought this coalition people? So I say frankly, those who called for the aggression, the Islah Party or the Saudis and the Emirates, did not stab you in the back. No, you stabbed your country in the back, and you stabbed the Saudis and the Emirates in the back. They have put an Islah Party into the blacklist of terrorist list. Excuse me, the moderator is interrupting him. We'll come back to you. We'll give you the floor later. But if you hear me, some people say if you believe in political dialogue, as was said in many questions, if you believe in political dialogue, there were results, the results of the National Conference of Dialogue, but you did not respect them. You pushed in your militias and controlled Sana'a by the force of weapons. What do you say to that? No, this is a good question, yes. The national dialogue, the first coup d'etat against this dialogue was when they changed the article that speaks about taking decision by consensus between the different political parties that present. So the article said that there should be no objection from any component, but they say that only two components are enough. So they changed the article that was in the agreement of the national dialogue. Before the end of the Conference of National Dialogue, Ahmed Sharaf-Din, who was delegated by representatives to represent Ansarullah in about the guarantees, they killed this man. They killed him. And so then they ended the dialogue without continuing it. What did they do after the dialogue? They had some good points in the dialogue, the agreement, fair development, reconciliation until elections. What did they? Did they change anything as was said by the National Conference dialogue? No. They continued as if this dialogue was only to give legitimacy to what the status quo. They kept excluding Ansarullah, they kept excluding the southern forces. So this was not a good political process. We will be back to you. We will be back to you. So the Minister of Interior made the campaign against us and called for closing the political bureau of Ansarullah. Then came the 2014 revolution, and the revolution succeeded. Did we monopolize the political decision? No. We signed the agreement about the national partnership. So, but the defeated parties still want to confiscate the political decision. While the victorious party, which is us, we call for dialogue, and we call for partnership. This is not precedented in the history. We say, let's over. The moderator says there is a new equation. You are dividing the question to victorious and defeated parties, while we will come back to you to discuss the different scenarios. Now we go back to Dr. Bakir. You heard a lot of questions, which are questions that represent a sort of concern about Yemen. What will happen? What will be? What is the real problem? So if you want to understand the situation in a political and methodological way, and a rational way, the question is, how can we reach a clarifying point of this complex issue? In fact, it's very, it is really a source of, it's a pity that we, the Yemenis, are talking against each other as if we are historical enemies, and they are the enemies of our own country. In fact, I will try to answer some of the points that were raised by the audience in a quick way. For sure, I agree with the gentleman about the idea that patriotism can be divided, and consequently, this should be include everybody, not selectively used. But it's calling this the Houthis, and those are the legitimacy of the hotels. This is all the expressions that are a result of the political tensions. So you don't count on such terminology. The other thing, what was said by Mr. Jarmozi, we here not to represent any party. We only are trying to describe the situation, and we were called here to do so, to speak and to discuss with each other, so that we benefit from each other ideas. And the other question was the idea about the division of Yemen, who benefits from that. No doubt the first one to benefit from this are the enemies of our country, those who work against our country, those who are from the external powers. I remember my teacher, Professor Muhammad Abdul Mutwal, who also was martyrized. He said, he used to teach us in the university, he used to tell us, if we do not make concessions with each other, we will be forced to make concessions for the foreigners. So, if we today don't make some concessions between us, ourselves, to solve this conflict and this crisis, and if there are some good offices from the regional person, we accept that, but if it's in the interest of Yemen and their own interest, but in a way that would not overstep the sovereignty of Yemen. Nowadays, when the Emir speaks about some islands and that they have some expansionist ideas, any country can go into agreements with Yemen, treaties with Yemen, on the basis of, I would like to ask you a question. What are the options of the future? The Yemenis' options for the future. In fact, there are the same options, which is that should make concessions for each other and sit to the negotiation table. Some might say that there's no point in the negotiations. As for the regional support, it's no longer useful, and in fact, what we are saying today that the Yemeni forces nowadays can themselves, as you said, they are very good forces in all the components of the society. They can sit together but today everybody is exchanging accusations. In Yemen is the only country that everybody considers everybody a terrorist. The South consider the North a terrorist, and the Central consider everybody a terrorist. And who benefits this is the external powers. That's why, and now give the floor to Said Thabit.
All what is being talked about is dialogue, concessions. But the regional powers, are they going to accept the dialogue? There is a regional conflict, Emirati, Saudi, and Iranian under an international umbrella. And some analysts, they talk about dialogue between the different internal forces. Isn't that perhaps impossible if the regional powers that are controlling the scene cannot have dialogue with each other for them to have an outlet from this quagmire? Can the internal forces enter into a political dialogue and confront these challenges? In Yemen, the word that has been overused and used badly is al-hiwar, which is dialogue. Since the beginning, for years, Yemenis have been talking about dialogue to the extent where people have discussed it. And I'm talking about the truth here. The national dialogue took them 2 years. All components met, they spent millions, and they discussed everything, the constitution, the visions, the future, and also descriptions of the different issues and problems, and the United Nations, and the Security Council, and the League of Arab States, and the GCC. The whole world had come to Sana'a in order to deal and to present this dialogue. All these efforts have been exerted during the dialogue. There is another problem in Yemen. There is some issue in our history, which is the Yazani kind of complexity. Yemenis tend to rely on the external world, historically speaking, unfortunately. They used to call external powers to find solutions to their problems. Those who read history would see that in more than one region, to the extent where we have seen countries that have been established as a result of recruiting powers to find solutions to their problems. And this goes back and dates back to Saif ibn Yazan's era. Those who are speaking about dialogue are the first persons who have carried out a coup against this dialogue. How do you see the future, sir? Said, how do you see the future? No dialogue, no capabilities, and so on and so forth. we're talking about a reality that we would like to put in its own framework, in its own context. What had been mentioned by Dr. Abdurrahman was the crux of the matter, the crux of the solution, going back to what had all people agreed on, and what Al-Bakhiti talked about. There are some details that do not justify this destruction, this bloodshed. And the dialogue was carried out. There was an agreement on the vision. Maybe there would be some amendments with regard to certain details. And I would like to be frank here. I am a journalist, and I would like to tell you that Yemen is not going to go back how it used to be in 2011. There are so many wounds, so many matters, political matters that I'm talking about, need to be revisited. And we have to have a real reformulation when it comes to the distribution of power and wealth, as it was agreed on in the national dialogue. It should be a just procedure, an agreed on procedure. Going back to square one, this is not right. We should not end or start where we ended a long time back. No, we should start where we ended in our dialogue. Our generation, that is about to see an end. And I do apologize, those who talk about hotels and about those who live outside the states, they should have some shame. Those who left were forced either to be killed or to be imprisoned or to leave the country. And I am not only a journalist, I am the deputy of the member of the or the leader of the association, journalist association. Those who are talking about hotels should be ashamed, because they are the reason behind this kind of disintegration. No person would want to leave his own country. No person would want to be forced to leave the country or to be displaced. This is what I see. Yemen is not going to go back and become how it used to be. We have three scenarios. The worst and the most dangerous is the disintegration. The easiest is the division in Yemen. It seems that I'm not going to honor my promise to give you more opportunities to ask questions. I can't even go back to my guest in Sana'a. It seems that Yemen requires so many discussions, so many seminars. This is a very intricate and complex kind of dossier where we have a intersection of so many dimensions, social, economic, and political, and so on and so forth. I would like to extend my thanks to Mr. Yasser Al-Yemeni from the General People's Congress, and also Mr. Bakil Ahmed Al-Zandani, who is the head of International Relations Division at Qatar University. And also we have had also Yasser Al-Yemeni and also Saeed Thabit, Bakil Al-Zandani also, Mahid Al-Bakhiti, Yasser Al-Yemeni, and Saeed Thabit. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos from Brookings.